So that's why I say he didn't contribute crap to the medical world and was just doing terrible experiments to people just for his own enjoyment.
Yeah, so nothing came from it. Nothing positive. Nothing. We didn't learn anything. He was basically just torturing people to see what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare horrors. Murder.
All right. Well, it's time for another episode of Healthcare Horrors. Sitting across from me is Alicia Carosella, a recruiter at Atlas.
Hi.
What's up? And then I'm Ashlee Boyce, a brand specialist. And then over there is Dolan.
On the knobs.
Already. I guess that's where we're going today.
All right, so today we're talking about Josef Mengele, the Auschwitz angel of death. And there is so much stuff on this guy, so we won't get weird. We'll just jump.
We could be here for 5 hours. There's so much stuff.
We'll just start jumping right into it. So to sum it up really quick, he is known for genetic research and experiments primarily on twins at concentration camps. Josef Mengele was born March 16th, 1911 in Günzburg, Germany. He was the eldest son of Karl and Walburga Mengele.
What a name.
I know. I feel like whenever I say it, it just like there has to be a little bit of an accent there.
I have no accent, so I will be saying things very plainly and Americanly.
He was entrusted to supervise farm equipment that the family manufactured as it gets transferred to train stations for shipments. At a very young age, he was just a natural leader. He was very handsome and charming. He was not a very good student, though, not really into education. He was more about his appearance and fast cars and money. So what other young man isn't into that stuff?
Nerds. People who are into education.
Playing D&D over here.
Yeah. Those guys.
No.
I feel like we're taking a shot at Dolan over here.
Well, I mean, you are the one. Well, I would not say that you're necessarily interested in education based on the fact that we learned that words are hard and that's why you're not a mortician.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
You have the power to cut out whatever you want, though. All right. He, handsome, charming, not into school. Walburga, his mother, was known for rage and had classic symptoms of bipolar disorder, which at that time it was undiagnosed. And this is kind of a red flag for how Josef acts later in life. So we get to the 1920s and Hitler's influence begins growing. In Mengele's late teens, he gets involved in a German youth movement. It was a really hard word to pronounce, so I didn't even write it down or attempt to try and spell it or anything.
That's very fair.
Oh, man. And then, late teens, I guess this involvement in the German youth movement kind of switches his gears into being interested in education after all, and he starts at the University of Munich in 1930 to study medicine, philosophy, and he wants to become a famous anthropologist and geneticist, which I feel like that comes way out of left field.
That's not a fast car.
And he wants to be famous and wants to one day be in an encyclopedia. Boy, are you. Yep.
What's your only goal in life? To be in Britannica.
All right. So, yes, Hitler, his influence continues to grow and spread. The idea of German superiority, discrimination, and eventually, of course, the murder of the Jewish people. So anti-Semitism. And Josef his curiosity grows into science and what science could do for the Jewish community. And like the phrase German pseudo or Nazi pseudoscience kind of comes into play a lot, because it's like they think it's science, but really it's just their messed up way of thinking.
Anything can be science if you let it be.
Right.
Is that my messed up way of thinking?
All right. 1935, Josef graduates with honors. He has a PhD in anthropology and is a certified physician. So yeah, he goes from not liking school to graduating with honors. Now he's 25 years old and begins a position at the University of Frankfurt as an assistant to a renowned racial scientist, Ottmar Freyer von Verschwer.
Wow, you said that really well, because I listened right before you came in here. I listened to somebody else on the internet pronounce that, and you killed it. I'm very proud of you.
Do you have it like wrote down phonetically on your notes there?
No, so I like really suck when it comes to like pronouncing medical terms, but this I just got, I guess.
Can't say coronary, but she can say a mouthful of German.
I want to make sure Nathan is proud if he listens to this, because he knows.
There you go.
All the German. So Verschwer really gets under Mengele's skin and kind of he molds his brain. Together they begin an institute for hereditary biology and racial purity with Nazi funding. They look into disease and genetic abnormalities. Also at this time, so now we're moving to September 15th, 1935. This is when the implementation of the Nuremberg laws come into play, which restrict the rights of citizenship of the Jewish people. Okay, so it's Verschwer that teaches Mengele that human experiments are okay and acceptable. At least he doesn't experiment on twins when they're alive, though, which Mengele eventually does.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. And so human experiments, he discovers, are okay. And
no, they are not okay. He discovers that he thinks they're okay.
Yes, he thinks it's okay because his mentor is telling him it's okay. And sadly, just is realistic that racism in medicine led to many scientific advancements, I guess. It's really messed up, but I guess they discover things. Not really Mengele, though. All of his findings were crap. So it was...
So he's not a good scientist.
No.
Or a good doctor.
Not really. Not really at all. Again, all the experimenting. So it was also Verschwer who thought twins held the key to unlocking secrets of genetics, because you have one twin that you can experiment on and one twin that you can leave intact, basically, since they're identical usually. You look like you want to say something, or you just
so one twin is the baseline,
right?
Yeah, it's like what do they call it? Controlling your in science. That's what I'm trying to think of. That was my thinking face.
Think of a phrase.
Yeah.
Thinking face.
Yeah.
It's a controlled variable.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Perfect. Josef, again, eager disciple, quote unquote, of Verschwer. He had a mind for molding. In 1938, Josef Mengele joins the SS. In 1939, Germany declares war on Poland, where Josef serves at the age of 28. So I have SS Race and Resettlement Office doing administrative position. So he has an administrative position and gets to determine the racial cleanliness of people in the war. He reviews credentials, census, family trees, like that kind of determines if you're a real German or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really intense. I guess I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's a field physician during World War II, where he comes to the grim realization that you can't save everyone. So I'm sure he thinks, all of his German comrades are very superior and he probably wants to save them all, but you can't in certain situations. In 1942, he does get injured in battle, so he returns to Berlin, overseeing concentration camps. He picks back up with his mentor, Verschwer. Now I feel like I'm saying it weird.
That's okay. Eventually, I'm gonna have to say it, and I'm gonna butcher it. So,
they continue doing research. He starts going towards the concentration camps.
So it's the way you're making it sound is like he's casually like just gallivanting or strolling over to the concentration camp.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, job opportunity.
I'm not laughing because the concentration camps are funny. I'm laughing because Ashlee.
The way I'm phrasing it and trying to read through my notes. Yeah, because I know like Verschwer eventually like sends Mengele to Auschwitz specifically because there's so many people there at their disposal, basically, to experiment on. And I'll let you get into Auschwitz, but at like the concentration camps and stuff like in Birkenau, they're doing messed up experiments on people, like purposely exposing them to diseases like tuberculosis and influenza and a whole bunch of other diseases, and then injecting them with other substances just to kind of see what happens to the disease in their body. Let's see, 1943, he becomes a chief physician at Birkenau. And then, like I said, they find out there's an endless supply of subjects at Auschwitz. So Verschwer wants Josef transferred to Auschwitz as an SS doctor.
So, SS physician Josef Mengele, as Ashlee had said before, he conducted inhumane medical experiments on prisoners at Auschwitz, and although he was not the head doctor, he was the most prominent of a group of Nazi doctors who conducted these experiments that were causing great harm and death to these prisoners. Again, Mengele used Nazi racial theory to justify the wide spectrum of experiments that he was doing on Jewish people and also on Roma people, who are gypsies. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure where they come into play, but they were also at his disposal.
Yeah, I think Auschwitz had like a specific Romani camp too. They just separated everyone.
Many of those who were subjected to Mengele's experiments died, obviously, as a result. And were purposely murdered to facilitate post-mortem exams. So, Dolan, that's your lane.
Yeah.
Mengele, I guess I'm kind of jumping ahead, but eventually he escapes to South America after the war and evades prosecution as a war criminal. I guess he died in 1979. Yeah, that really jumped ahead. That jumped way ahead. But during his time at Auschwitz, Josef Mengele was not the only physician. Like I had previously said, he was not the highest ranking. It was actually SS Captain Dr. Edward Worths, and he was the garrison physician that was actually responsible for all of the medical matters in the entire camp complex. So approximately 30 physicians served at Auschwitz while Mengele was assigned there at the camp, and as it was required as part of their rounds to make selections of prisoners at the camp. And these selections determined who from among the crowd were going to be retained for work and who would perish immediately in the gas chambers. So that was part of their duties as well.
It's like they had three options. It was like slavery, death, or if you appealed to a doctor for experimenting,
you can be experimented on.
Mm-hmm.
So then Mengele became interested in using twins for medical research through his mentor, Verschwer. Did I say it right?
Sounds good to
there
me.
You go.
Okay. I heard you say it so many times that hopefully I was like, commit to memory. Verschwer himself was famous for experimenting with identical and fraternal twins in order to trace the genetic origins of various diseases, like Ashlee had said. And then during the 1930s, the twin research was seen as an ideal tool in weighing the factors of human heredity and environment. Mengele and his mentor, Verschwer, had performed a number of legitimate research protocols using twins as test subjects throughout the 1930s, but now at Auschwitz, with full license to maim or kill their subjects, Mengele performed a broad range of agonizing and often lethal experiments with Jewish and Roma twins. Most of them were children. So that's very sad.
Yeah, there was like a lot of interesting concepts that they were experimenting with, like eugenics, which you kind of touched on, which is like the study or control of the reproduction of humans to reduce undesirable characteristics, or like, and this wasn't only happening in Germany, this was like all over the world too. Like if someone had a mental illness, they didn't want you to breed, basically, things like that. And then there was epigenetics, which is how your environment influences your genetics. Fun facts.
He had a wide variety of other research interests, and among these was a fascination with heterochromia, which is a condition in which the irises of the individual's eyes are different in coloration.
Yeah.
Throughout his stay in Auschwitz, Mengele collected the eyes of his murder victims, in part to furnish research material for a colleague, Karen Magnuson, a KWI researcher of eye pigmentation. I don't know what KWI stands for, but
it sounds like a radio station.
I was just going to say that.
That's what I was thinking. It just says KWI.
Wait, he kept the eyes of people?
Yeah.
Like I know he experimented on their eyes, but
he kept them.
Man.
Killing
wonder
with
if that's a trophy.
Intent?
No?
Yeah. Okay.
He, Karen Magnuson, also conducted several experiments in an attempt to unlock the secret of artificially changing eye color. Like, what doesn't matter, not important whatsoever.
Yeah,
we do not need to change eye colors.
Injecting liquid into, or chemicals like into the eye to try and change the color. Why?
Well, wasn't eye color like one of Hitler's?
That's true.
Like
main
blue eyes
things,
or
yeah.
something.
Now that you say that, maybe they wanted to
Yeah.
make everyone's eyes blue.
Yeah.
God, they're weird. And then also, Dr. Karen Magnuson documented inmates in the camp. He was documenting the progression of a disease called noma. It's a type of gangrene that destroys the mucous membrane of the mouth and other tissues. So they are really researching all kinds of things here.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it all sounds really terrible. Mengele attempted to demonstrate the degeneration of Jewish and Gypsy blood through the documentation of physical oddities and the collection and harvesting of tissue samples and body parts. Many of his test subjects, again, died. I don't know if they say it, they all die. I'm like, yes, that's what he does. Mm-hmm. Died as a result of all these experiments. And like most scientists at the concentration camp, Mengele enlisted the aid of trained medical professionals among the prisoner population to perform the more grisly and mundane tasks and to carry out autopsies on his dead victims. So he's just taking prisoners who are educated and he's using them to his advantage to help him out.
Yeah, his assistants were Jewish medical professionals.
Oh my gosh.
So sad. Yeah, so sad. And like the ones he did keep alive, I know, like, I wrote down that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, he would like take measurements of his victims or whatever. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday was for like taking blood samples and injecting them with chemicals. And so he had a schedule, I guess.
Wow.
Terrible.
Well,
for certain things.
Josef Mengele was hoping that all of this quote unquote research that he had done in Auschwitz would help him to produce his habilitation, which is a postdoctoral dissertation required for admission to university as a professor in Germany. Instead, in January 1945, as the Soviet army advanced through western Poland, Mengele fled Auschwitz. He spent the next few weeks at the Gross Rosen concentration camp until it was also evacuated. And then he made his way west to evade capture by Soviet forces, and that's how he ended up in South America. In the immediate post-war period, Mengele was in U.S. custody. Unaware that Mengele's name already stood on a list of wanted war criminals, U.S. officials released him.
Oh, good job.
Yay.
Good job.
Good job.
So from the summer of 1945 until the spring of 1949, using a false identity and false papers, Mengele worked as a farmhand near Rosenheim, Bavaria. His prosperous family then aided in his immigration to South America, and then he settled in Argentina. You guys, it's a very Monday, Wednesday. Mengele's crimes have been well documented before the International Military Tribunal, also known as IMT, and other post-war courts. West German authorities issued a warrant for his arrest in 1959 and a request for extradition in 1960. Alarmed by the capture of Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires in that same year, Mengele moved to Paraguay and then to Brazil.
Yeah, they almost had him again, and he just
he's like, nah, I'm gonna go this way.
Mm-hmm. Psych.
So then Mengele spent the last years of his life near Sao Paulo. He was in declining health, and he had suffered a stroke and drowned while swimming at a vacation resort near Brazil it wasn't Brazil. It was near Bertioga. This is not for me, pronunciations.
Not sure.
So this
Somewhere.
dude-
He died on my birthday in 1979,
Wow.
February 7th, 1979.
Interesting.
So this dude basically got away with it.
And then drowned.
Yeah. They eventually find his remains, so he was buried under the name Wolfgang Gerhardt.
Mm-hmm.
And they study his remains and realize it was Josef Mengele. So yeah,
They found him in 1985.
Wow.
And they found his grave, they exhumed his corpse, and then Brazilian forensic experts identified, obviously, the remains as Josef Mengele, and in 1992, DNA evidence confirmed that it was, in fact, Josef Mengele.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just out there chilling for 34 years after the war ended.
Yeah, he was never caught, never served justice as a war criminal, and all of the terrible, terrible things that he did. And I know, so once Germany knew they were losing the war and the concentration camps were going to get closed down, a lot of the doctors and just everyone there wanted to destroy their records, probably because they knew what they were doing was effed up.
Not ethical.
Apparently, Mengele sent his records back to Günzburg, but they were never found. I don't know if they just never made it there. Maybe someone out there has his experiment records, but yeah, as of right now, nothing was really recovered. We don't know exactly what he found, so that's why I say he didn't contribute crap to the medical world and was just doing terrible experiments to people just for his own enjoyment.
Yeah, so nothing came from it. Nothing positive. Nothing. We didn't learn anything. He was basically just torturing people to see what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's really sad.
Wow.
Yeah, I have it written down that he manufactured conjoined twins, and if you want to paint that picture, terrible. And there was a group of rabbis.
You mean he put them to?
Yeah,
he conjoined them.
He conjoined them, manufactured them himself, and he would remove or replace their sexual organs, just terrible things like that. Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. And he starts getting so sadistic. In the podcast I listened to, there was mention of a group of rabbis that comes off the train at Auschwitz, and he makes them sing and dance and do their prayers just to prove that their prayer won't save them. And this is just for his sadistic enjoyment.
I feel like a lot of things had to go wrong for him to get to this point in his life. It's kind of crazy that it all starts with how he was brought up.
Yeah.
Because I feel like how you're brought up really influences the decisions you make as an adult.
Yeah. We'll blame Velberga.
Well, it just started with her. That's all I'm going to say is it just started with her.
Yes.
But then, of course, he's got the perfect opportunity to just be his crazy pants self.
Yeah, with all the Nazi money funding, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we went through that pretty quickly. But I mean, you could get all into the grim, nitty-gritty, terrible things, but I feel like a lot of people, for the most part, know a lot of the terrible things that happened. But yeah, Josef Mengele was one of the many terrible doctors at Auschwitz, and he was known for twins specifically. So don't do the things that Josef Mengele would do, right?
Or Dr. Bashwar.
Yeah.
Don't do those things.
This whole time he was reporting back to Bashwar too, just sending him notes. And
was he not also sending letters back like, hey, no?
Like, stop doing this. This is terrible.
Or also like this is pointless and you're not contributing anything.
I'm sure he was just as into it.
God, I hope not.
Sadly. I mean, it was him that also kind of started one of their, I don't remember what exactly it was called, but some...
Bourgeois?
Yeah, the Institute for Heredity and Biology and Racial Purity. So yeah, he helped start that. So he was also definitely into Nazis. Was a Nazi.
Maybe that's what all the notes that Mengele was sending to him. Like, hey, this supports what you're trying to do, even though maybe that's not exactly what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Because that's where Mengele got a lot of his ideas too.
Yeah.
Like, he was, I don't know where his interest in genetics and stuff came from, but once he met Bourgeois. Yeah, and then he really got into the twin thing and, experimenting on people is supposedly okay, and just kind of goes from there.
Well, Josef Mengele was a terrible man.
Can't argue with that.
Well,
anything else on him?
No. Okay. Next week, though, we are going to talk about Christopher Duntsch.
Terrible spine doctor that Dolan is like super into. He's been talking about wanting to do this guy for a while.
Well, what's so fascinating, I won't give any spoilers, but what's so fascinating, about Chris Duntsch is just how recent this occurred, and the wild ways in which this was allowed to happen, and it's just too recent. It's it's like too close for comfort.
Yeah.
So
in 2 weeks,
tune in for Christopher Duntsch murder.
Thank you for listening to Healthcare Horrors, brought to you by Atlas MedStaff. Just a reminder, we are not healthcare professionals. We are just fans of true crime, talking about some of history's darkest moments in healthcare. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and stay safe.